Solon Simmons is a political analyst with George Mason University. He's standing by in our Washington studio to explain how this is going to affect Obama's re-election chances. So what's your reaction, Solon, when you saw these numbers out this morning?
Well, they're obviously not good for the president, and there's the problem of what the facts are, and then there's the issue of what the facts mean, and not just what they mean to experts, but what they mean to voters. And the way voters seem to think, based on the data, is that they look back to the past. They have a retrospective look at how things are going, how have things been, not how are things going to be. So they don't say, what are Mitt Romney's economic policies and how might those play out, and what's the likelihood that'll be good for me and for the economy as a whole, and then what are Obama's policies and so on, and let's have a prospective take on this. Instead they say, well, how are things going generally, and are they good and are they bad, and then let me vote on that basis. And so the president is in trouble for that reason, because although he might match up well against Mitt Romney in terms of the kinds of policies he'd like to implement, that is, he can make the case that, well, Mitt Romney is promoting an idea of getting the government out of the economy, much like George Bush did before, and so that might not work so well. You know, think about it in those terms. That's not how voters tend to react. They tend to have this kind of retrospective, very direct look at things. And so for the president is sort of in a desperate bind, because he really has to have good numbers over some period of time prior to the election. It's not exactly clear what numbers those are and how good they have to be. Some of the estimates suggest that 75,000 jobs is the right cutoff. We're below that here. And so it's not great for the president, obviously, although it's not devastating because he has had a fairly long-strung string of increasing job numbers, so he can tell that story as well. What the facts are, what the facts mean, that's the big issue.
I wonder how much of his re-election hopes are tied to that number, though, because, you know, for a lot of people who don't follow the economy super closely, if you follow what I'm trying to say, they see that number, and it's very symbolic, right? They see this trend that slowly but surely it's been going down. All of a sudden, there's a blip. Obviously, the White House hoping it is a blip for only a month or so. But, I mean, overall, this has got to be good news for Mitt Romney today, because he has been hammering since even before he became the nominee. He has been hammering the fact that it's all about the economy and that Obama has made things worse with his leadership.
Yeah, Romney wants this to be an election about the economy. He wants it to be about an election about what the role of government in the economy ought to be. And the reason he wants that is because he has a story about how the economy works. Again, going back to what these facts mean, the story is that the government gets in the way of economic growth of the job creators, that is, business people like himself, who create jobs, which then trickle down to the rest of the people as the economy improves generally. The president has a difficult story to tell, because in Mitt Romney's story, you've got a villain. You've got a sense of what's wrong, who caused it, and you can point to those people. Who's the villain for Barack Obama in his story? Is it capitalism? Is it Mitt Romney himself? Is it Bain Capital? And if you start going down that road, many of your funders are uncomfortable with the stories that you're telling, and they're afraid you're going to take away their slice of the pie. The president's in a bind in this sense, and we see that his own supporters are rebelling against it. That's why he's in a way hoping that he can talk about other things, maybe the social and cultural issues that might distract away and give him a clear narrative of change, because the narrative of change around the economy is not so clear, and it's very difficult for him.
You know, politics is so interesting, Solon, as you know, because you got this situation in the States where, in fact, the Romney camp is almost hoping that the economy doesn't do better, because in that sense, it helps them long-term in November, which is sort of a strange, I mean, they'll never actually say that, but it's sort of a strange place to find yourself in.
It is, and obviously Mitt Romney would hate to have that story circulating. Oh, I'm cheering for the economy to do badly. I imagine some people will start to speak about it in those terms. Look, the Romney camp simply wants these numbers to be bad. Think how bad things will be when they actually come in. But, you know, what's interesting is that going back to this idea of how can the president put a spin on this that makes sense. I think what he has to do is he has to suggest something about how he's interested not simply in capitalism, but in consumerism, not simply in bailing out the banks, but in bailing out the consumers who drive the economy. Getting money in the hands of the average worker, the common person, the middle class, drumming that through and making sense of it all. And he's got to somehow put that on the agenda and get voters thinking in that prospective mold. But voters don't like to think prospectively. They like to just read things and have it make sense in a very obvious way. And so the president is in trouble, and Romney can root all he wants. It may well work well for him come November.
Solon Simmons is with George Mason University in Washington. Thanks very much for your time, Solon. Always a pleasure.